really, we've spent a lot of time on making sure that we prepared our hearts. We've all said it. Every pastor up here at one level or another has said, you need to prepare your hearts. You know, Pastor Donna has talked about making sure that you're prayed up. Make sure that scripture that talks about praying without ceasing. It's not just you're constantly mumbling as you walk down the road, but you're in a constant conversation with God the Father about what's going on in your world, about every decision you make, which way you go, the fact that you used to say before you go into Walmart. Now, definitely we pray before going into Walmart. You start a trend. About Father, let me find the right deals. Let me buy the right things. Let me make sure I don't bump into the wrong people. Those kinds of things. And, as you walk through this in preparing our hearts, preparing our minds, not Jesus, back up a little bit. God, actually, it was the word, put a pressure on Noah back in the day to prepare for a rough time frame. He said, you're going to build an ark because there's a flood coming. And everyone around him argued with him, and he didn't, and just laughed at him, picked at him. I mean, made fun of him, but he still stayed true to what he was told to do, was to prepare an ark. Now, at the moment everything went sideways, everybody wanted in. True? Everybody wanted in at the last minute. But it was just for who God called. God had to prepare a certain thing. You talked about Joseph this morning. Joseph was given the dream of a 7-year time of famine to where things weren't going. And he was in the enemy's camp, but said, listen, this is the dream. This is the interpretation of the dream. And we need to prepare for a time of famine. 5 years ago, Pastor Henry started preparing us, saying you need to prepare your houses, your homes, your hearts, everything for a time of famine. Pastor Benny's talked about it from a financial point of view from famine. We've all talked about how to make sure you've got, Texas is going through a hurricane right now, so you're supposed to have at least bare minimum in a natural disaster, 7 days worth of food and water. That's bare minimum. And we've been saying it for 5 years. I told you this. I told you when we're sitting up here. I'm stuttering. The prophecy talked about having peace, and I have my peace, but I have an unrest, a urgency, a desperation, if you will. Scripture talks about that as you see these things happening, know this, that the time of the Lord coming back is sooner than it ever was from the day of our salvation. Whether it be next week, 10 years from now, or within this generation, it is sooner than it was ever in any of our lives. There's an urgency to prepare our hearts. We have, for lack of a better term, beat this dead horse as far as we can to prepare your hearts, to prepare your homes, to make sure you've got stuff stacked up, because at some point we've already seen, never would I have imagined in my lifetime I would have had to go to a store and see shelves stripped away of not just milk, bread, and sugar that you get when it rains in the South, but I'm edging up on my seat. I know, but then I'll pace because I'll get excited. Never would I have imagined in my generation to walk into a grocery store and see it stripped out. Those were things I heard about my grandparents told me about, that my great-grandparents, that we listened when we were kids and we were like, oh, that's never going to happen to us. And we fluffed it off. And Proverbs talks about that a wise man sees devastation and sees the enemy and sees danger afar off and then hides himself, moves away so that way he can escape it. But we sat there as children most time in this generation, I'm blaming us, we ignored it. We didn't do quite as we should have. Now we're seeing what we thought never would happen. There's an urgency. There's an urgency in Scripture to prepare not just our resources, as Noah and Joseph taught us, if we paid attention. There's an urgency to prepare our mindset of how we pay attention. Are we paying attention? From a security mindset, I'm teaching the teaching. From a security mindset, I teach situational awareness. We do it constantly. We tell and this church knows this is one of my pet peeves. When my girls go to college, well, actually, when anyone goes to college, when you go to the grocery store, everything, you pay attention to what's around you. Proverbs 22, whatever that verse is, teaches us pay attention to the evil around us. You pay attention to everyone, good, bad, and the ugly, to make sure your eyes and ears are open, making sure something that will be your demise isn't coming at you, that you don't get caught into, picking my words, I was going to use circumstances and situations to get trapped in areas that are not safe, that are not wise. You know, that's the scripture talks about paying attention, being vigilant, not slumbering, not sleeping, but being awake. I mean, 1 Peter 5, 1 Peter 4 and 5 both talk about being awake. You preached up here for an hour about wake up church. Pay attention to what's going around you. Not that you were in fear of it. Not that you were like, oh no, but to have wisdom to know, what do I need to do? Where do I go if everything goes sideways? What do I do if I lose power? Are you prepared if all of a sudden you lost power for more than how many hours? 3 or 4 hours. Are you prepared? Beyond the physical, beyond the, you were talking about, Pastor Adrian, about what it looked like if you didn't have air conditioning. Are you prepared to take a cold shower so you don't stink because there's no electricity for hot water? And I'm looking at 90% of in this room going, oh, that ain't happening. I will figure out how to get warm water because hey, you know what? Maybe we should be practicing taking a shower in the stream just so we're used to. You don't know how long something could go out. And not from just preparing there's a mindset that has to be prepared to stand up and do what you've been called to do. It's a heart issue that you've got your heart up and ready to go. All of us have prayed up our heart that if somebody came in here and says, deny God or not, we're in our hearts doing this, but do you have the mindset to follow through?